Welcome to this edition of Windows IT Pro Insider. We are broadcasting from VMworld 2011 in Las Vegas at the Venetian. I've been here for a few days. I'm Deuby, Technical Director for Windows IT Pro Magazine. This is Mr. Mike Otey.
Yeah, I'm Michael Otey, Senior Technical Director for Windows IT Pro Magazine and SQL Server Magazine. And on the other side, we have Jeff James.
I'm Jeff James. I'm an Industry News Analyst for Windows IT Pro and for Business Technology.
Right. So this has been a big conference. There are just shy under 20,000 people here, which makes for the biggest keynote room I've ever seen. It's so big that when you go into it, it looks like a science fiction map painting in the distance, and even up close, it's still quite amazing. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right. I think this is the biggest conference that I attend in the year.
Is it?
I think for tech conferences. I know there are a few bigger with consumer things, but for IT tech conferences, I think this is the biggest.
It's interesting for me also because you have to pre-register for everything. And
yeah, it's a first this year.
Unfortunately, besides talking to execs and vendors, I wanted to hit some of the overview sessions and some of the other sessions, and they were all booked up by the time I was able to. Now, people tell me you could just kind of walk in, actually I heard the press said that you could walk in, but still, it's a challenge to try to get everything in.
It is true. A lot of times you'll get turned away on sessions here if you are not pre-registered. I find it to be a hassle because I'm a procrastinator.
Yeah, no, me too, Mike.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's most IT pros don't go to the number of conferences that we go to, so there's a lot of juggling that we have to do as far as that. And yeah, usually if we have the airfare and the registration taken care of, we feel okay. So.
I think the production values too at the keynote. I mean, if the first 10 minutes kind of preceding when Merits came out, I mean, they spent a lot of money on that introduction. I mean, it was like all 3D animation, looked like something out of Tron. I mean, it was really pretty impressive.
That was pretty awesome, I have to admit.
And even the smoke was state of the art. I spent time around the theater, and I've been in my share of stage smoke. And they're blowing smoke all over the keynotes and everything, so you could see the lights.
Are you saying they were blowing smoke during the keynotes? Yeah. I like that.
That's a quote right there. So
you're right. The only question is which direction was it coming from? Was it coming from the stage or was it coming from the back of the room? I'm specifically talking about it coming from the back of the room, and it was odorless, completely odorless smoke, which is
not like some of the rock concerts I was at in my youth. So definitely odorless.
It wasn't that long. A lot of talk about hybrid cloud, and as we've seen, as the conversation about cloud computing kind of keeps moving around, it starts and first started talking about cloud, and then people eventually realized that it was public cloud, and everybody got all worried about public cloud and security and all that, and then of course the topic starts moving towards private cloud. Okay, have it on premises or have it all your own, and now. It hasn't taken very long for people to start talking about hybrid cloud, the best of both worlds. I was just in a session where he was talking about hybrid cloud and what kind of workloads were best for pure public, which was best for pure private, and which worked best for private for hybrid. And he actually had some good stuff on savings and stuff like that because it was an economic one. And their study had shown that if you implement a cloud computing solution, the least cost savings was implementing, I can't remember the exact way, they were all very close together, but the overall cost savings was between 80% and 73% of the cost of a legacy traditional solution. So it's developing your own cloud computing solution is not so much about saving tons of money. You've already done that by putting the infrastructure together and virtualizing everything. That's the big money saver. But he said you can't save your way to success. So what it does, what it builds you is a return on your investment, because it builds you a lot of agility to do the business things that you want to do once you've got it in place.
I think that what you've hit upon something that touches one of the things that really makes what you see at this conference different from what you might see at Microsoft conferences. And that's I think that with VMware you see a lot of emphasis towards the entire IT infrastructure being brought into a virtualized environment. In other words, their kind of take on it is that the entire infrastructure would be virtualized, not a mixture of virtualized and physical infrastructure. And when you talk with Microsoft, there's kind of a mix of the two that they know that you have to put up with. And I think in terms of where most shops are at, I think the Microsoft take is more in line with what we see today. But certainly maybe the VMware approach is where things are headed for the future, because it does seem like moving everything into a virtualized infrastructure might be the way it goes. And they have security products, like you mentioned the vShield product, it's like that provides security around the virtual domains and things that they create. So it's a sort of a different take on how IT should be performed.
Sure. Yeah, it really is. I mean, VMware and Microsoft are definitely approaching it from slightly different, angles. So we'll see how it plays out.
And we were almost, when I was interviewing Rob Smoot, who is a VMware executive responsible for management systems, specifically, in particularly their operations tools. The way the analogy started working out, he kept talking about it, as he was talking about Microsoft, about the vertical stack. And then as he was talking about VMware, he would go horizontal on it, which is, it's vague, but I think that's a real challenge for people, is to decide what more aligns with what they're looking for. And, as we were talking to Edwin Yuen yesterday, this really is a critical time, because you have to, once you have bought into a virtualization vendor, a virtualization solution, down the road, it could be hard to impossible to change it.
Yeah. Right. I think you're absolutely right, and I think that now is a critical time, because most businesses haven't committed one way or the other. And I think vendors, well, they say that they're open solutions, but they're actually looking to a lock-in kind of thing, where once you take it, there's a big danger that you'll be locked into that solution for the future. And these solutions, well, they have different technical aspects for sure, but they're also priced very, very differently, as Edwin was trying to point out to us the other day. And so there are definitely economic and technical ramifications, and now's a really important time to understand which way to go, or at least carefully evaluate the different options.
Sure. And one thing we talked about yesterday too was, it seems like there's, if you just look at the people that VMware brought out to talk about using their products, I mean, all of the people they brought out were from very large, very well-known companies, and I'm sure part of that was for the show, but it also seems like really big companies with vast resources are maybe more eager to virtualize everything to really get that ROI and cost savings, maybe, and they can afford to do that. But maybe smaller and mid-sized shops just don't have the money or the resources to completely do that. So
they were trying to address it with the products of VMware Essentials and VMware Go, which looked interesting, and they said the idea was to make it brain dead simple. To use the product, especially in terms of a SAN, because if you're going to have any kind of a virtualization infrastructure, you have to have some kind of a failover, because you can't put all your eggs in one basket, which typically means you have to have a SAN. Yeah. So they've put together a virtualized SAN. It's a virtualized SCSI.
Yeah, I talked to the product manager about that from VMware, Timothy Steffen, I think his name was, and they call it the VMware Storage Appliance.
Yeah, that's
and they've come out with the 1.0 release of it now. And it consists of 3 different systems that go together, at least a minimum of 3. And these are standard off-the-shelf hardware systems. And when you combine them together, they can see the memory and the direct access storage of the systems all as a single pool. And so you'd run your ESX servers on these systems. They would be your virtualization platforms. But then the systems themselves, through the interfaces that you described, are able to perform the kind of tasks that a SAN would do, giving a small business this kind of availability that otherwise you'd need the Essentials Plus or one of the enterprise SKUs of vSphere to achieve.
There are several products. In my previous company, I did set up poor man's failover cluster using a virtualized SCSI appliance, which is simply you simply install on two physical servers in the different partitions. It's not the fastest thing in the world. Speed. The fact that it works at all is impressive. Speed is not one of them, and if you really want to get good speed on it, you have to then invest in like a 10 gigabit Ethernet switch and NICs to handle that. But it does work.
Right.
But I think it was interesting. You want to talk about our meeting with Edwin way over in the back corner of the...
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a theme. Mike, I'm sure, has got a lot to say about this too, but it seems like there's a theme.
Jeff has posted some great pictures on this, by the way.
It seems like every VMworld, Microsoft, for either their choice or VMware's choice, ends up at a tiny little conference room way in the back of the expo hall by the janitorial equipment, and we were actually sitting down with Edwin and a PR rep from WagEd, and we're sitting there having this discussion, and every minute or two, the floor would actually shake, and the walls of the cubicle would shake because there's this heavy moving equipment running back and forth. And I joked that I bet VMware is probably paying this guy $5 to drive by their booth every 10 minutes. But it's always been kind of humorous. So.
Every time they mention something critical, like the cloud that drives by.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and of course, by massive coincidence, Microsoft published a white paper on Tuesday talking about the relative savings of using a Microsoft solution versus using a VMware solution. And of course, what was the video? The guy, the 1970s.
Wasn't it Virtualization Limited was the title of it?
Yeah, that's right.
I watched it myself.
Yeah, I've watched it. It's quite funny.
Huh.
I mean, the guy actually looks like some people I used to know. I mean, with the big heavy goatee and the long hair and the glasses. It's very clever. Microsoft is not necessarily known for making clever videos, but they've had a few good ones with Gmail Man, and now this one with VMware. So.
Yeah, another thing that's happening too, and we've talked about this a little bit, is the licensing, because VMware is changing up their licensing for vSphere 5, and I actually spoke with an IT pro, kind of coming down from the elevator this morning, and he was talking about how the licensing changes that VMware is introducing is making them reconsider whether they want to adopt more VMware products or maybe even switch over to Hyper-V. So, and I know there's been a lot of controversy in forums and other public places about it. So,
I would second that. I've heard several negative comments about vSphere 5 licensing here, and there's some dissent about it. A lot of people don't like the way it's licensed, and it seems to be licensed in such a way to prohibit or at least to discourage scalability and more to encourage consolidation to a higher degree. And that's something you have to be careful of. Been going into it and to know that about the licensing. Don't assume it's the same as what was in vSphere 4 because it's not.
Sure. I think the gist of what that white paper was saying, and indeed what the what was it, VM Limited cartoon?
Virtualization Limited.
Virtualization Limited spoof was about is that essentially the VMware licensing is on a per VM and memory basis. So as you add VMs and then as you continue to increase the size of your environment and have to add memory to go it, you have two factors that are increasing in price. Whereas the Microsoft licensing is on a recommended data center for data center servers, and then that's licensed on a per processor basis. So that is more or less linear in comparison.
Yeah. And as Edwin made sure we pointed out to us, it could be potentially much cheaper.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
The Edwin we're referring to is Edwin Yuen, who is director of their Microsoft's cloud computing strategy. Anything else interesting?
One of the things that I saw that was pretty interesting here was the mobility, the virtualization mobility support. I met with one of the VMware representatives here, I believe, what was his name? Hufar Razavi. And he was in charge of that, and he brought one of the devices with us to demo.
Wow.
And it was very cool. I had the impression that this was a technology that was still a year or 2 years out, and this is just definitely not the case.
Why don't you explain what it does? I mean, the whole.
What it is it is a hypervisor that runs on your phone. So right now it currently supports the Android operating system, but no others, and it allows you to have a phone or a personal side or partition to your phone, and then a business side to your phone. And you can switch back and forth between a little app that's on the screen, and it's as simple and quick as just touching the app, and it works almost instantaneously. I was really impressed about how quickly and how seamlessly it worked, switching between the different sides. And this can allow you to have your own personal settings, which are unaffected by what happens with whatever IT may have on their side. So on the IT side, through their Horizon Mobile Manager product, they can control what applications are presented on the phone and how they're used and what kind of policies are in place about when the phone is wiped and what kind of security is on the phone, so it controls the phone in that way. But also, so if, like, for instance, if the phone is out of contact for a certain number of days, it will succeedingly tend to decrease in functionality until it's wiped. So if you're like out of contact for like 6 months, it's gone.
Oh, really? It has sort of a slow self-destruct.
Exactly.
Oh, no, that's
exactly.
Yeah, that's a great.
Exactly. And so it does use their the Horizon Mobile Manager product, and VMware names Horizon. Where does that come from? I don't know, but what does that have to do with phones? I don't know, but that's the one.
It could have been Octopus. You know, they also have Project Octopus.
Yeah,
so.
Well, and that'd help you avoid. I'm a poster child for. I've got a personal phone and a work phone. I think having one device would really.
That is exactly the scenario they're looking to get around. And what really surprised me though is how close they were to it. Because they are waiting for phones. They have, I guess there's a mod in the kernel that's coming out from two partners that they have, LG and Samsung. So they have deals with these two partners, and as soon as the phones are out, which they said was basically imminent, it's going to happen very, very soon. This capability will be present for IT departments. So I was pretty amazed by that. Like I said, I thought this was a future kind of thing, but it's right around the corner.
But that could be a huge boost for Android too. In the enterprise, it's like
it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, and it's actually a driver in a whole bunch of reasons. That's a VMware value prop over in Microsoft right now. Is the ability, you mean we can finally manage our mobile devices? Mm-hmm. At least in a certain subset of phones. Well, this is a good point though, because what we're talking about is when you're talking about this in the consumerization of IT, these are purportedly the user's personal phones. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not going to be on their personal phones for 2 years. If you think of the hardware refresh of someone's personal phones, at least 2 years. It's not like IT is going to go out and buy 500 of these phones and then hand them out to people. I mean, maybe some will. But at least the use case we're talking about is that they already have the phone because it's theirs, and then they come in to work for the company and then get the Horizon Mobile on it. So before we actually see this, I mean, Horizon Mobile has to be out, the users have to have the right phones and all that, but this is the first working example of something that we've been talking about and wishing for years.
Right.
Virtualization right down on the mobile device.
It could be very significant. And I was wondering, I did ask him, well, what kind of phones does this require anything special in the way of hardware? Because the phones are powerful, but are they powerful enough to support virtualized environments? And he said this would run on pretty much any mid-level phone that there is available today.
Oh.
And that, it basically played on VMware's strengths. That what you said is correct, because consumers won't be adopting these new devices, the next generation of devices, for some time because they've got what they've got.
Oh, I see.
But the phone itself, and hardware-wise, they say right now it's able to run the virtualization support, and they say that they took advantage of their expertise in developing virtualization for resource-constrained environments, like they did in the early days.
Right.
And of course, Android is a form of Linux, and they've supported virtualization for Linux for some time.
Right, sure.
So,
well, the kernel, yes, that's exactly the case. I'm wondering, because it has to be all the way down to the hardware to support virtualization. So, in other words, some phones right now, and moving forward, mobile devices, maybe tablets, as we go forward, that would be awesome. And of course, that's to be expected too.
Yeah, sure.
I wonder if VMware is talking to Apple.
Yeah, you never know. It's a brave new world. So
he said it had the potential to run on any of the other platforms, but he wouldn't make any commitment as to whether it would support Apple or whether it would support Microsoft's Windows Phone or anything like that.
Now that raises an interesting prospect of having one phone that's running a VM with iOS, Android, and Windows Phone 7 and separate VMs. So that would be interesting.
I definitely didn't get the idea it was going to do that. It did have some cool things that you wouldn't expect, though. Like, you would wonder, how do you manage the different personalities on the phone? Like, if you get a message on one or a message on the other, how do you know between that? And that's exactly right. They combined or unified the notification bar. So when you get messages, the different sides are colored differently in the notification bar, so it unifies both environments.
Well, they've got to squeeze a lot. They have to squeeze a lot in that little space. Then.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they do it. So.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
who knows? Next year at this time, when we're doing this again, we'll report on what it looks like.
Maybe we'll have them.
Maybe we'll have
Yeah.
them. Well, great.
Yeah.
I think this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Any parting comments? Or we're good.
Gotta look out for the taxi line.
That's right.
Right. Well, hopefully this was a good time. We had a good time, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. So this little addition here. I thought it would be helpful to explain my shirt on here. This shirt comes from the Cloud Identity Summit, and for an identity geek, this is actually rock, paper, scissors. So the rock is security, and the paper covering the rock is usability, so usability over security. And privacy is scissors, which goes privacy over cuts usability. And then, of course, to complete the cycle, security can trump privacy. So it's kind of a cycle all the way around. Now, on a little addition to this, and those of you that are familiar with it, this is actually accidentally if you're British, this is an insult. The way this is put together this way, and you have to look it up. It has to do with English bowmen in the Battle of Hastings in the French, and I won't get into it now. But anyway, that's the point. I thought I would wear my my Cloud Identity Summit T-shirt. So yeah, maybe we'll have some other interesting T-shirts as we go on to the next one. So thanks a lot.
Fascinating.